So calculating ARV, who remembers what ARV stands for? After rehab value, after we rehab the value, or after we rehab the property, what is the value it's going to sell at? Okay. So you're going to calculate the property as if you were going on a listing presentation. How many of you guys go on listing presentations or know how to go on a listing presentation? Okay, half of you guys. So to do that, it's really, really simple when you're working with flippers, is you're going to go in, you're going to find the square footage. You just look it up on HomeSnap, find the square footage of this particular property. Okay. And search 300 square feet above and 300 square feet below. So if the property you're looking at is 1,500 square feet, just go pull comps from the last, in this market, I really, really need them in the last 60 days. Last 60 days, if we can get enough information from the last 60 days, because 120 days ago, we were in a different market, and 180 days ago, we were in a real different market, and 210 days ago, we were in a completely different market. So the last 30 to 60 days will give us the best valuation for our ARV. And what I want to do then is pull up the closed, sold. I don't care what is listed for sale. Especially in this market, I'm not putting any weight on what is for sale. If it's listed for sale, that only tells me the price of what buyers are not willing to pay for that property when it's listed for sale. Okay. So we're only looking at sold, and sometimes I'll pull pending if you can, again, get insider information. And what I would do is I'd call that listing agent and say, hey, I have a buyer looking at a property, or just say, hey, I have a listing coming up in the neighborhood. We're just trying to figure out a good list price. Do you mind sharing what you guys are going to close about at? Some agents are like, nope, can't share that information. You know better than that as a real estate agent. That's not illegal. But you just, you charm them, you create that relationship. Hey, no, hey, you don't have to tell me the exact number. You don't have to give me all the details. Are you close to list price? I saw that it was listed for 47 days. Are you within 3 to 5%? Just try to get whereabouts so you can share that information so you can put it into your calculations for your ARV. Questions on those first two steps?
If you can't find 60 days for any sell, you have a day and
yeah, it all depends. There's that. So the question is what if we can't pull any comps for the last 60 days? I just had a property yesterday. There was one comp in the last 180 days. But that also tells me that, so then I go back for the last 2 years. And so I'm going to dig in deeper for that. When you bring me these properties, this was a property in Vista. That's a horse property, very unique. And we're gonna put a bunch of things into those factors, because I also have to then factor in, which we'll get to, how many days is it going to take me to sell the property? Meaning, how many days am I going to sit on this? Because when I borrow money, and I'm going to go over this in a couple slides, when I borrow money, it costs me every single day quite a bit of money to borrow that money. Okay, which means it also costs my investors profits, or it costs me profits, or it could potentially cost you profits. So all of those go into the factor. Okay. Then we multiply. Here comes this math. Be careful. You multiply that ARV times 65% to 70%. 65 to 70% right now, which is just 0.65, 0.65. You pull out your iPhone, you find that ARV and you multiply by 0.65, write down that number, and then multiply by 0.7. Okay. Question.
Why are you using plus or minus?
I've always just had really good luck with 300 square feet. It keeps my ARV tight, not going too big, not pulling out comps that I, really wouldn't get adjustments for from the resale appraiser or my buyer. I'm trying to stay within as close to that property, like for like property. Now, again, if you run comps and you've sold a lot of properties, listed and sold a lot of properties, and you feel pretty comfortable, I, of course, am always going to do.
If they have questions, go ahead and throw them.
Okay.
So that way Zoom can hear.
Yep. My fault. So the question was, what's the reason for the 300 square feet? What if the property is 5,000 square feet or 1,000 square feet? Are you still just using 300 square feet? I always start there. Adrian said, why wouldn't you just use 20%? If you have a method that you can determine, like I said, you've listed and sold plenty of properties that you feel comfortable calculating your ARV, I'm okay with that. I'm always going to run my numbers because I have to do a significant amount of due diligence to borrow the hard money, to get investor money ready. So if you feel really good, this is just a quick and simple 300 square feet above and below.
Take into account lot size at all, or as far as on the comps, the different.
Hey, you just heard him. You got it.
Take into account lot size and
I do.
how much higher and below do you go on that?
Yep. So lot size, again, I'm just looking for like. I will add some. Every property is different. Yep. I mean, San Diego County, we still have plenty of acreages coming here. So it's just it's a case by case, coming all the way back.
I have one right now that has a single family on it, but it's zoned RM15.
Let's not ask specific property
Okay.
questions.
Well, I just want to know, like, how would I value that to be able to send it to you, or do I just send it to you with what I think is like?
Okay. So this is again specific. I believe Brian's going to have a form of how you can submit, and we're gonna talk about everything that you would need to submit. Okay. And then we can always have, again, when they're one-off questions, we're gonna try to teach to the rule, and then there's always exceptions. I'm gonna try to teach to the rule, but there's always gonna be exceptions because we're dealing with properties and we're dealing with humans. So every property that I've ever purchased has a different situation going on. Okay, so you take that number, you do the math first, then you go back and you have the conversation with the listing agent. Hey, I noticed you had this property. It looks like it needs some work, or it's been sitting on the market, or whatever. It doesn't appear that it's going to qualify for conventional financing. But again, you just start this conversation, and then you say, hey, I have a cash buyer. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to pay, or maybe it is whatever they're asking. But you're going to say, they're looking at paying probably between X and Y, and that's usually that 65 to 70%. Okay. And you just start to have that conversation. And again, it's building that relationship with that agent. Most of the agents, especially right now, are pretty open to this. If it needs work, if it's truly distressed, had a tenant moved out. I shared an example with you guys last time on the last purchase that I bought, was on the market for 7 days. I just shared another example, was on the market for 5 days. Okay, so don't have limiting beliefs if you feel it's a good opportunity to have these conversations. And here's why I'm going to talk about these conversations that you're going to have, again, with the listing agents or other agents or the sellers, is when I got into this, when I switched from being basically 100% full-time traditional real estate buying and selling to starting to work with investors about 2.5 years ago. Here's what I did not do, because my flipper said, if you're just going to send me properties on Redfin, I'm going to block your number, Kelly. Okay. So the question I always ask when I'm working for anybody is, what's the maximum amount of value I can bring? So what I did is I would find out all the information that I could find out. I'd call the listing agents or I'd talk with the seller. I'd try to get the timing. When do they want to move out? Is it going to be vacant? What's their motivation? And really what I was trying to do is build that relationship to get to the number that it's going to take. And what I would do is I would go back and call my flipper and say, hey, have this property on 123 Main Street. They're looking, it's vacant already. They're looking to close as soon as possible. So the 7-day close would be really beneficial to them. And it looks like it's going to take $600,000 to get the job done. Then their team usually runs. But I didn't say, hey, here's this property on 123 Main Street. What do you think you could pay for it? I went and got them as much information as I possibly could, especially if the property's on the MLS. Because if the property's already on the MLS, they have the ability to go get whatever information you just sent them. So what you're trying to do is add value, just as if I am, because that's how I want you to treat me, is a client of yours. Is a personal client of yours, a personal cash buyer. So you want to say, how much value can I bring to this client? So that's what you're doing, is you're looking to get as much information and bring that information, but like I said, you're trying to bring that value so you're not dispensable. Because if the only thing you're doing is going to send me a property on the MLS, A, chances are I've already looked at it on the MLS. Or B, I can just go to the listing agent, then directly get the information that I need, make the offer directly from them, let them double end it, and get the property, have a better chance of getting the property. Make yourself indispensable, meaning you're a linchpin for me. You're going out, or any client, any flipper, whether it's me or not me, I would always highly recommend any client that you're working for, you want to go and give as much value as possible. Does that part make sense? Because that's going to be the hardest part. That's every time I give speeches or talks or talk with a group of agents, the ones that get it will go get this information. The ones that just want to make a quick buck will just send me properties. And again, I already have access to the same information that you have access to for the most part. You guys have to be the linchpins where you create the relationships and get the insider information.